What up, brothers? Welcome to another Facebook Live. This is the Sunday Sermon with me, Mike, your mentor. And every Sunday, I talk about certain events that happened in my life that had a profound effect on who I was then and who I am now. So, if you're new to this channel and you're seeing this video for the first time, welcome. The premise of this channel is I grew up in a pretty crazy environment, had a lot of difficult things happen to me in my life along the way. And now that I'm older and I reflect, I ask myself, why was I able to do something with my life? Why was I able to be the first person in my family to graduate from college, to hold down a good job, to have a family of my own today? And I identified two things. One, the grace of God, but two, I had mentors in my life, right? Whether that was through the books I was reading or through men that were in my life physically that saw something in me, that encouraged me, that gave me hope, that let me be a part of their lives and see how they interacted with other people, how they interacted with their wives and with their family. And I soaked it all up like a sponge. I was always watching whether they knew it or not. And that made a profound difference in my life. And now that I'm older, I want to take those seeds that were planted in me and I want to share those with other people and share that wisdom from all the things that I've learned through the crazy situations that I've been through. So that's what this channel is about. And let's jump right into tonight's Sunday sermon. It's pretty fitting. It's Friday. On this channel, we do what's called Man Up Friday, where we walk through basically a workbook series that I went through at a very difficult time in my life when I was living in Chicago with my wife. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be married, and I came across this course that the church I was attending had, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And the saying's true, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that series talks about is wounds in your life. And this past Friday, so 2 days ago, we talked about father wounds and how do you deal with those in your life, and what does that look like? How do you identify those? So tonight's Sunday sermon is about a father wound, or my father wound in my life, and this is part two. And if you go back through all the videos, they're on this page, they're on my YouTube channel. You can learn more about what part one looked like. But just to summarize, my dad, he was in and out of prison for selling drugs through from a young age, I believe, until I was about age 10. So if you take a look at this picture, right, this is one of the homes. Actually, it's the last home that we all lived in together as a family. That's me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. So before I get into this, I just want to say one thing, right? Like, I'm talking about my life. These are very serious things. There's other people involved, one of them being my mom. I'd like to say that I have a good relationship with my mom these days, much better than I did in the past. I respect my mom. I love my mom. And I want to honor my mom. So I just say all that to say that now that I'm older, I realize that my mom did the best she knew how to do with what she had to work with. And if I was in her shoes, I don't think that I could have done any better. So I'm grateful for my mom and everything that she did, and that she stuck by our sides through thick and thin. And I didn't realize that at this time in my life. I blame my mom for a lot of stuff, which I had to apologize to her for. So I just want to put that out there. So I'll get into this video. So this is the last house we lived in together. My mom, me, my brother, and my sister. My grandpa actually bought this house, and it didn't look like this, but he moved it out here to some land that he had. You can't see, but his house is actually in the back of this, up this hill, and he built it so he could keep an eye on us, because things were pretty crazy at times. and he moved it there, and he fixed it up, and he put us all in there. And my dad, he was gone. I don't know where. Well, actually, I don't know where he was. I do have kind of an idea. I found a letter actually going through my stuff that he had written me during this time. I think it was like maybe when I was 13. I wanted to find it and show it to you. But before I was doing this video, oh, I just saw it. It's actually pretty interesting. But yeah, I got it right here. Don't know if you could see that up in the corner. Just show my camera here in a second. Alright, so you can see that, right? He wrote this to us. And it was dated... Oh, it's actually 1997. Oh, my mistake. So, this is after this time period. But, okay. So, retract that. Alright, back to the story. Yeah, so we were living in this house, and my dad was gone. Don't have a clue where he was. All I know is that I was 15, and my dad just showed up back on the scene. And I didn't ask any questions because I was happy. You know, here I was. I went through my early teenage years, some very formative years of my life, and my dad wasn't there. And I was usually, if not the only kid, one of the only kids that didn't have his father at his games, you know, didn't have his dad there at parent night. In the community we lived, there wasn't a lot of single family homes at that time. You know, growing up, that obviously changed the older I got. But that just wasn't how I remember it, unless I'm wrong. But yeah, my dad came back on the scene, man, and I was pumped. You know, I was so glad my dad was back, and he started living with us. And I'm not really sure how long he had been on the scene before this event took place. But yeah, basically I woke up. Well, no, I didn't wake up one morning. I came out, and if you look on the right side of this house, it looks like there was maybe a car there. This is not an old picture. This is one I think I took earlier this year when I was putting all this together. But there's the driveway down there, and there was a basketball hoop, and I would be out there pretty much every day, every night until dark, shooting hoops, working on my game, trying to get better. And one night I was out there doing my usual routine, going through the jab steps and the jump shots and all the moves I used to practice. And my dad, he came out, and that hill right there, I guess to the right, there was like some railroad ties, and you could actually sit up against that brick right there. And there was a spot, and he was smoking a cigarette, and he was watching me play basketball. But I noticed he had this really sad look on his face. It was just different than the way he had acted previous to that. And I remember asking him, hey Dad, what's going on? And he's like, I'm really worried. And I'm like, why is that? And he said, your mom hasn't come home tonight, and usually she's home by this time. And me being the ever optimistic person that I am, I was like, oh, don't sweat it, Dad. Everything's going to be all right. She'll be home anytime. And I think I shot for a couple more minutes, and then finally he was like, hey, it's time for you to come inside, go to bed. So go to bed, wake up the next morning to just screaming and yelling. You can't see my bedroom because it was in the basement on the back side, but this little that window, right, that 4-piece window that you see right there in the front, that was the living room, and right behind that was the kitchen. So I ran up the stairs, and when you come up the stairs, you turn right, and you see my parents' bedroom, which is on the right side of the house right here with these 2 windows facing the driveway. And then immediately right next to that was the kitchen. I come up to the kitchen, and they're screaming and yelling at each other, or mostly my dad's doing the yelling. And I look at him, and I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And he's like, I told you something was wrong last night. I knew it. I had a feeling. Your mom was out with some other guy, and she doesn't want to be with me. She doesn't love me, and we're not going to be a family. And he's just going on saying all this stuff, and I'm like, immediately, right, I feel this emotion. It's just starting to overtake me, and I just react, right? Like, I'm not wise enough. I'm not at this point able to take everything in. And I just look at my mom with tears in my eyes, and I'm like, is this true? And my mom's like, yeah. She's like, I don't love your dad. I can't be with him after everything he's put me through, after everything he's put us through. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear this. And I just stormed out of the kitchen. My brother and sister's room were these two windows that you see on the left-hand side. So I went in there, made sure that they were okay, asked them if they wanted to go to school. They wanted to stay home, so I took off. I had exams that day, and I don't know. I just didn't want to be in the house, so I left for school. So I go to school. I'm in my 6-hour period, taking my exam, and the principal knocks on the door and says he needs to see Mike King out in the hallway. After all the oohs and ahs and what'd you do this time, I got up and went out and met him out in the hallway, and he said somebody wanted to talk to me. And so he took me around the corner, and there were my mom and dad. And like a cocky, sassy teenager that I was at the time, I looked at him and with a bunch of attitude said, "What do you guys want?" And my dad said, me and your mom talked, and she's going to stop seeing this other guy, and we're finally going to be a family after all these years. And I was like, yeah, right. I don't believe that. And I looked at my mom, and I'm like, is this true? And she was like, yeah, it's true. She's like, I'm going to stop seeing him, and I'm going to give your dad another chance, and we're going to make this work for you kids and for us. And I'm like, you're serious? And she was like, yeah, I'm serious. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And then again, like, I was fine. I was happy again, right? All the sadness, all the, I guess, the depression that I was feeling just melted away, right? Because that's what I wanted to hear. They were telling me what I wanted to hear as a 15-year-old boy. And I went back, and they left. I went back in class, and my buddies were like, what was that all about? I told them. I was excited, couldn't wait to get home. I think I had some sort of practice that day. So I got done with the practice, coming home, and this is the view, right, when I get dropped off at home of walking into the house. And as I approach the front door there, I hear more screaming and yelling. And I open the door, and I go in, and my mom and dad are in the kitchen again, and my dad's screaming at my mom, and he's holding something down by his side in his left hand, but I can't tell what it is. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's crying. I mean, he's upset, and he's like, your mom changed her mind. She just says she can't get over, everything that I've put her through, and she doesn't want to be with me. She wants to be with this other guy. She just can't do it. And he's like, and she smashed the ring I gave her. And he holds up this ring, and sure enough, my mom had taken a hammer and smashed it, and it was like it was all lopsided, right? And he was really hurt by that. And my dad had kind of given her this ring as like a promise ring, like new beginning type of thing. And I mean, he pissed her off somehow when I was gone, and she smashed it and sent him a message, and he didn't like that. And I couldn't deal with this, immediately here I go, right, from the highest of the highs back to the lowest of the lows. And I ran down the stairs into my room, and I laid on my bed, or at first I turned on some music on my stereo, and I just put it as loud as I could to drown out their arguing. And I laid on my bed, and I cried myself asleep. And I must have been asleep for a few good hours, maybe 2-3 hours. And I woke up to this just huge crash, like this sound of glass shattering. I mean, it was loud, and I startled me awake, and I run out my room and up the stairs again and through the kitchen, and I come into the living room, right, and I'm looking out this window, this big window here, and my dad is just out in our lawn, where this tree is at, and he's got his shirt off, and he is not in his right mind. I mean, he is higher than a kite, and he's screaming and crying and yelling obscenities at my mom and saying she's a no good woman and a blankety blank and this and that. And I start yelling at him. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? And I just, like, something clicked, and I was like, what was that noise? And I looked down to my right, and I see this rock, and it's about maybe a little bigger than a softball, maybe like this size. You can see my hands, right? And he took this rock from our front yard, and he picked it up, and he threw it through the window of that front door there, that white front door. So the glass is all shattered. The rock is laying there. All of a sudden, my mom comes flying out of this back room that we had, and she's like, John, you better get out of here. I just called the police. They're coming here. You something to the effects of you just better leave. And immediately my dad was like, oh, SHIT, I better get out of here before I go back to prison or something. And so he was a truck driver, so his truck was parked in front. He jumped in his truck, and he took off down the road. And he disappeared. Don't know where he went, and he was gone. And I didn't see him again for a number of years. After that took off, the police came, and they were like, what do you want to do? And this was a kind of a crazy situation, right? Like, so my grandpa had put this house in my name, and he wanted it to be in my name so that if anything happened to my mom, that I could take care of her. And when the police came, they were like, well, who's this house belong to? And I knew this, and I don't remember if my mom knew it at the time. I don't think she did. I think my grandpa kept it secret from her. And so I told them, and they were like, well, what do you want to do? You want to press charges? And here I am, I'm 15 years old, and I'm like, right, I'm in this between this rock and this hard place. Like, do I press charges against my dad? Like, I'm for my dad at this point in my life. Like, that's the last thing, like, I want to do. And I told them I wasn't sure what to do, so they wrote up a report, and then they ended up leaving, and they didn't press any charges. No charges were pressed against my dad. And then after that, eventually I was pissed at my mom because I just couldn't understand. The thing about, like, the hindsight and all this is, right, like, my mom was right. Like, my dad had just done her wrong too many times. And I don't blame her now that I'm older for doing what she did, right, for putting her foot down and for sticking up for herself. And at the time, I didn't realize that. I just blamed her for making my dad leave, and I was upset. So my dad took off, and some stuff happened between over the next couple of days between my mom and the gentleman she was seeing, who ended up becoming my stepdad. And that's a different story for a different time. But fast forward about 3 years, and I'm getting ready to graduate high school, and I get a call out of the blue, and it's my dad, and he says that he's sorry. He hasn't been there for me, my brother, and my sister, and that he wants to make a change, and he's going to come to my graduation. So I'm like, okay, cool, see you there. And at this point in my life, I believe my dad. I believe that he would be a man of his word, and he didn't keep too many promises to me, but this one he did, and he showed up. So there's a picture from my high school graduation with my dad, and I was pretty excited, to see him after all these years. So we talked, and I told him that I was going to be going to college, play some basketball, get an education, and try to be the first person in our family to graduate from college. And he said that he was proud of me, and that he wanted to be a part of our lives, right? Like he was going to be around for us. He was going to come and watch me play basketball. He was going to send me some money and support me in schooling, and all the things that I wanted to hear, that we wanted to hear. But it was short-lived. Unfortunately, after the graduation, he disappeared into the wind again. And yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave it at tonight. Next Sunday, if you tune in, we'll pick up in the next part of the Sunday sermon. And as the weeks progress, we'll get into what happened to my dad, and where he went, and ultimately some other events that took place between then and between my dad coming back into my life for a second time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight, as I shared a little bit more about my life and about that father wound that I had, right? And like we talked about on Friday, this was a huge wound in my life that I had to deal with, and I had to go back and face that, and ultimately give my dad forgiveness, right? And in the coming weeks, we'll talk about what that looks like as well. As you deal with your own life and forgiving people, and getting over these things that scar you and that try to weigh you down in life. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for the Sunday sermon. If you know a guy that could use this type of content, I'm trying to be super vulnerable and super open with you guys, just to encourage you, to give you hope in your lives, and to help you answer the higher calling that's on your lives as a father, as a husband, as a employer or employee, as you guys go out in your community and you make a difference, right? Because as men, we got to do something, because this world is out of control. And I'm making that my responsibility to do what I can in my own circle of influence, and that's hopefully make a difference in you guys' lives and make an impact for everybody that's watching this. I could care less about being famous. I could care less about being the guy, whatever that looks like. I care about people. I care about making a difference in people's lives. And if you're watching this video, I might not even know you, but I could say that I love you from one brother to another. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to go through depression. I know what it's like to not want to go on in life. But I know what it's like to break through that and to reach the other side, and to realize that everything this life has to offer us, and we got a choice every day of not what happens to us, but how we're going to react to those things that come up. So I've blabbered on enough. I love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow for My Life Monday. Please share these videos. I appreciate you guys spreading the word. I appreciate you guys liking these videos and commenting on how they're affecting you, and maybe how they affect your own life, and the things that you guys have to deal with, the father wounds that you guys have to face in your own lives. So have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.